The wedding reception was exactly as I expected. A loud, goody monument to my brother's ego, funded entirely by my father's checkbook. The air was sick with the scent of Liège's overpowering day made my headache, mixed with the cloying sweetness of cheap champagne trying to push itself for the expensive. I wished my father, Robert, among how measured his words by the things he could buy for others Theoshi, slappbacks and laugh a little too loudly. He was playing his favorite role, the proud patriarch. My brother Kevin, the family's charming but reckless golden child, stood beside him, soaking in the praise he never had to earn. It was the perfect picture, and as always, I was on the outside of the frame. Then my father grabbed the microphone for an impromptu speech. He gushed about Kevin's new marketing job, his beautiful bride, and the future they have in the house he is so signet for. Each word was a testament to Kevin's success. A success built on a foundation of parental handouts. I thought about the thousands of dollars I had meticulously saved for my own education. Every penny earned through work they dismissed as unimportant. He finally gestured vaguely in my direction, a lazy flick of the wrist. And there's my daughter, he announced, his voice suddenly shifting, coated in a thick layer of condescending pity. Your little soldier. A few relatives offered me weak, sympathetic smiles. It was then that a curious cousin leaned over and asked my dad what exactly he did in the military. My dad let out a loud, dismissive bark of a laugh that made my stomach tighten. How knows? She asked Joyce the soldier. She plays with big boats or something. He looked directly at me then, a cruel glint in his eyes he delivered a final blow, his voice carrying across the nearby tables. When are you ever going to afford a wedding like this? The words hinder. A public appraisal of my failure. It didn't flinch. I just raised my glass of water, took a slow, deliberate sip, and felt a familiar chill of my own hair turning to a solid this. And the worst part, I wasn't even surprised. It was just the loudest echo of a story they had been writing for me my entire life. To understand the insult my father threw at me so casually at that wedding, you have to understand the universe he created. At its center was my brother Kevin, the golden child, a man how wore his charisma like a shield to hide a total lack of substance. Orbiting him was my mother, Linda, a gentlewoman whose fear of confrontation was so profound that she would agree to any injustice so to keep the peace. Unholding it all together with the gravity of his wallet and his will was my father, Robert, a man how was obsessed with the appearance of success. A success he needed to manufacture, control, and display for the world. In this solar system, I was a distant cold planet acknowledged only when my orbit inconvenienced them. The clearest example of this dynamic is burned into my memory from the year it turned 17. For his 18th birthday, Kevin was gifted a brand new sports car, a gleaming black convertible that my father presented to him in the driveway in front of all his friends. The case were tossed like a trophy, and my father's chest swelled with pride. I watched from the living room window and in the reflection of that polished new car, I saw the tally of my own life. The school trips I was told we couldn't afford. The worn out laptop I had to use for 2 years after Kevin broke his and got an immediate replacement. The endless chorus of money is tight that only ever seemed to apply to me. That car wasn't just a car. It was a for-real declaration of my brother's value and my own insignificance. A week later, I quietly approached my dad in his study. I had been researching colleges, my one hope for escape, and I found a prep course that could help with my entrance exams. I asked him for $500 to cover the course and the application fees. He didn't even look up from his newspaper. Money doesn't grow on trees, he said, the words were from Overushe. If you want something in this life, you have to get a job underneath. He finally lowered the paper and looked at me, his eyes devoid of worms. We've poured everything we have into setting your brother up for success. We can't afford to do that for everyone. The hypocrisy voice is so blatant, it was almost breathtaking. His voice nodded, said, okay, and walked away. There was no point in arguing with the laws of his universe. That moment solidified my escape plan. I worked 2 jobs my entire senior year and not only paid for my own applications but also secured a full 4-year scholarship to the Navy ROC program. That day I told them I was buzzing with pride. I had done it all myself. I had built my own future. I laid the acceptance letter and scholarship award on the kitchen table expecting for one foolish moment to see a flick of pride in their eyes. Instead, I was met with disappointment. My father scoffed. The Navy. What a waste of your potential, he said, shaking his head. Theo him, my potential voice lived nearby. A career he could brag about at dinner parties. Doctor, lawyer, something he understood. My mother, Linda, so started Theo cry. But why do you have Theo go so far away? She whispered as if my success was a personal attack on her. Kevin is staying right here near home. They didn't see a daughter how had achieved something incredible. They saw a daughter how was abandoning them, escaping their orbit. Over the next decade, this became the first narrative they claimed Theo. Miley faint her Navy voice a story of failure and rebellion they told themselves and everyone else. When voice promoted Theo NS sign and then Theo lieutenant, it was met with a shriek. When Kevin got a minor raise at his marketing firm, my father threw a celebratory dinner. My deployments, often to dangerous unclassified locations, were framed as me avoiding the family and running away from my responsibilities. They told your relatives I had a simple government desk job because acknowledging the truth that I was an officer with immense responsibility was impossible for them. It didn't fit their story. My father needed Theo but the patriarch, the provider, the one everyone relied on. My independence wasn't something he couldn't brag about. It was an insult to his very identity. He resented that it didn't need him. Lying awake in my hotel room that night after the rehearsal dinner, I finally accepted it. They would never see me. So, I decided I was done trying Theo beszén. The truth would just have Theo speak for itself. After my fat rationing dismissal at the rehearsal dinner, something inside me didn't just break, it settled. 4 years, I had carried the hurt of their disapproval like a chronic fever, a constant love-grading of not being good enough. But his words, so public and so cruel, were like a dose of ice-cold medicine. The fever broke. The ache was gone. In each place was a profound and unfamiliar calm, a quiet, cold clarity that was almost unnerving. I finally saw that seeking their love was like trying to draw water from a dry well. It was pointless. The mockery wasn't an attack. It was a gift. It was the final signature on a contract, releasing me from all obligation to win their approval ever again. My goal was no longer to win their love. It was simply to let the truth have each moment. My plan, if you can even call it that, wasn't számintrakit scheme hatched in a fit of vengeful rage. The pieces were already on the board long before my brother's wedding invitation arrived in the mail. My life, the one they knew nothing about, had its own momentum. As a commander in US Naval Intelligence, my job was to exist in a world of classified information and hátborzongató decisions. For the last 18 months, I had been the lead intelligence liaison to the National Security Council for a time-sensitive operation. My family thought I played with big bots. In reality, I provided the crucial data that guided the actions of the most powerful people on the planet. I was on call 24/7, on the new that the final phase of this operation was imminent. When the sick cream-colored wedding invitation arrived, my first instinct was to decline. It was the easy option, the one I had taken so many times before. Citing the demands of my simple government job was my go-to excuse for avoiding the suffocating judgment of family gatherings. But this time felt different. Holding the invitation, I thought about 2 decades of being minimized, of having my life work treated like a childish hobby. I thought about the car, the college fund, the endless praise for Kevin, and the quiet erase of me. It was there in my quiet DC apartment that I made a different choice. I would go. I would accept their invitation to the grand theater of my brother's success. The plan was one of radical passive honesty. My receipt wasn't a piece of paper or a saved text message. It was my entire authentic life. A life symbolized by the plain dark encrypted font that never left my side. In my hotel room, I laid out my dress for the wedding. A simple elegant navy blue gown, a quiet nagy Theo, a joke only I would get. I made the conscious decision to stop shielding them from my reality. I would go to the wedding. I would smile politely and I would bet the quiet, invisible daughter they always wanted me to be. But my secure phone, the one that connected me to my real life, would stay on. I wouldn't hide it. I wouldn't make an excuse and run to hello be fit ran. I would let my 2 worlds collide right there on the dance floor. I wasn't going to light the match. I was just going to let them shine the fuse that had been burning all along. I had the truth. I had the stories they had so generously set for me. All that was left was to wait for the curtain call. We returned to the wedding reception to the exact moment after my father's words had landed. A thick, sticky silence hung over our section of the room. The kind of quiet that is louder than any noise. Some relatives stared at their plates, solely fascinated by their half-eaten chicken, while others shot my glances filled with a terrible, pitying kindness I never asked for. My father, Robert, looked immensely pleased with himself, basking in the glow of his own casual cruelty. I expected me to be flustered, to be hurt, to perhaps even cry. Instead, I just looked at him and offered a small, quiet smile that didn't take him anywhere near my eyes. I was no longer a participant in his drama. I was simply an observer waiting for the play's final act. And I knew it was coming. Then I felt it. A low, urgent vibration against the silk lining of my clutch. It wasn't the light buzz of a text from a friend. It was the insistent, powerful pulse of my encrypted word device. A secret tremor from a word they couldn't even imagine. A word that was about to crash into theirs. I discreetly opened a small bag and glanced at the stark glowing screen. There were only 5 words, but they were 5 words that would change everything. Status, urgent, vehicle en route. That was it. My heart gave a single steady beat. It is time. With a calmness that felt like it belonged to someone else, I stood up and carefully folded my napkin, placing it on the table. I walked over to my mother, Linda, who was already starting to look flustered by my sudden movement. I have to leave, I said, my voice even on low. It is work. She opened her mouth to protest, to ask why, to tell me it couldn't possibly leave my brother's wedding. But I was already walking away, my back straight, my heels clicking with quiet purpose on the marble floor. I pushed through the grand venue doors and into the cool evening air. Dozens of guests were mingling on the stone patio, smoking and laughing under the streams of fairy lights. They all turned as she walked out. Their curiosity piqued. Just as she reached the curb, a vehicle glided to a silent stop directly in front of me. It wasn't a taxi or an Uber. It was a large black government-platted SUV with windows so heavily tinted they looked like polished obsidian. The festive music from the reception seemed to fade into the background. A huish fell over the patio guests. The passenger door opened and a man stepped out. He wasn't in a military uniform. He was in a perfectly tailored dark suit that probably cost more than my first car. He radiated an aura of calm, serious authority that made everyone else look like they were just playing dress up. His eyes scanned the crowd for a fraction of a second before landing on me. His focus absolute. He ignored everyone else and walked directly toward me. The crowd parted for him as if he had an invisible shield. He stopped a respectful 3 feet away, but his voice was pitched loud, clear, and utterly undeniable. It cut through the night air, a blade of pure fact. Commander, he said, and the word hung in the air, electric, and impossible. Sorry Theo, interrupt, but the president is waiting for your briefing via secure video teleconference. We need Theo leave now. The entire world seemed to freeze. I saw my father, how had followed me outside, presumably Theo told me for my rudeness, stopped dead in his tracks. The arrogant, ruddy color drained from his face, leaving behind a pale, slack-jawed mask of pure shock. My brother Kevin stumbled out the door behind him, his perfect smile frozen in a richness of confusion. The whispers started immediately, spreading through the guests like a fire on dry grass. Commander, one said, did he say the president? The false narrative my family had spent 2 decades constructing the story of the aimless runaway daughter with the unimportant little job was publicly and spectacularly annihilated in less than 15 seconds. I simply gave the a small, crisp nod. I am ready, I said. Then I turned my head and gave my father one last look. There was no anger in it. No triumph. It was just a quiet final assessment. And in that moment, he didn't look like a tyrant. He just looked small. For the first time in my entire life, he had absolutely nothing to say. And in the ringing silence of that shock, I didn't feel anger or victory. I just felt free. For the first time, I voiced one way how got to walk away. As the black SUV pulled away from the curb, the chaotic floodlit scene of the wedding shrank in the rearview mirror until it was just another memory. Inside the vehicle, it was silent, cool, and professional. The air smelled of clean leather, not cloying flowers. No one spoke. There was only the low hum of the engine and the quiet crackle of a radio. This was my word, a word of order, purpose, and consequence. Hours later, after the urgent briefing was complete and the immediate crisis averted, I was in a sterile temporary office deep within a secure government building. It was only then, under the harsh fluorescent lights, that I finally looked at my personal phone. It was a digital inferno. Dozens of missed calls from my father, my mother, my brother. The text messages scrolled on and on. A torrent of frantic self-centered outrage. How could you embarrass us like that? From my father. You made a scene at your brother's wedding. I can't believe you. From Kevin. You need to call me right now and explain yourself. Everyone is asking questions from my mother. Not a single message asked if he was okay. Not one expressed curiosity or pride. It was all about them. Their embarrassment, their social standing, their confusion. I read through the messages one after another and felt nothing. It was like reading a frantic argument between strangers. I pressed a button on the side of the phone, plunging the screen into darkness, and placed it face down on the desk. The silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. A few weeks later, back in my own apartment in DC, a letter arrived. I recognized my moteres looping, elegant handwriting immediately. The envelope voice sick on the could see a small faint watermark on the paper, a tear stain, her signature tool of emotional warfare. The letter inside voice exactly what he expected. It was a masterpiece of self-pity and blame shifting. I just don't understand why you would hide your life from us, she wrote. I felt like such a fool. All these years, I thought you were struggling and you never told me the truth. How could you not trace your own murder? There was no apology for their dismissal. No acknowledgement of their cruelty. My success wasn't a reason for celebration. It was a secret I had maliciously kept from her. My entire life was once again reframed about her feelings. I read her letter once, then walked it over to her kitchen and dropped it into the recycling bin without a second thought. My silence was the only answer she was ever going to get. My new life, the one had built in the shadows of their indifference, was very truly felt at home. The following week, I stood at the head of a Polish table in a secure briefing room, a place where words had weight and facts mattered. The room was filled with serious people, colonels, analysts, department heads, and all their attention was focused on me. They listened as she laid out her intelligence. They asked sharp, insightful questions, and they respected the answers I gave. Here, I wasn't just a soldier. I was commander. Here in this room was my real unit. This was the family I had chosen. A family bound not by blood, but by mutual respect and a shared sense of duty. This, I thought to myself as she answered a question from a two-star general, is what belonging actually feels like. It wasn't something you were handed. It was something you forced. A few months later, I got a call from a cousin, the one who had innocently asked my father what he did for a living. After some pleasantries, she hesitantly told me about the fallout. Apparently, my father was not trying to brag about me to anyone who would listen. My daughter works for the president, they say at the local country club, but it was no she. Everyone had seen his public scorn. They had heard him call me just a soldier. His desperate attempt to claim my success as his own had backfired, turning him into a local joke. My brother Kevin, she mentioned, was also struggling. Without my father's undivided attention and financial safety net, the cracks in his perfect life were beginning to show. Hearing this didn't bring me joy or a sense of victory. It was just data, a confirmation of a hypothesis he had long ago accepted. They hadn't changed. But their gravity could no longer hold me in its orbit. I learned that your real value is never determined by the people who refuse to see it. It is forced in the silence, in the hard work they dismiss, and in the quiet authority you build for yourself. If you ever had to become your own commanding officer, drop a salute in the comments below. I see you.